If you've ever thought, man, I wonder what it'd be like to be a DJ on the radio, then you have come to the right spot. In this episode with Brother Van, we talk about DJ, being on the #1 morning show, Howard Stern, Kid Craddock. Then we go into rodeo culture, cowboy culture, Texas culture, the history of the rodeo, Taylor Sheridan, Yellowstone, 1883. It's a lot. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking it out. So, Brother Van.
Yes.
Currently spends his days at the rodeo, but on the weekends he's on the radio, which is an interesting vowel switch. And I'm super excited. I want to talk to you about Texas and country and cowboy culture and what stories you have with both. So we'll start with the radio.
Okay.
How did you get the job with the Dorsey Gang?
Oh, that's an interesting story. So I got started in radio later in life. I was in my early 30s and I was in the Midwest. I got my start in radio in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Okay.
And that was a period of time in the mid-90s when radio stations were going through, the FCC had changed on how many radio stations a company could own in a market.
Okay.
And so I had a morning show in Grand Rapids, Michigan. A competitor company bought us, and just like most times what they do is they came in and they let go of everyone from
Gotcha.
DJs to janitors. And so I was without a job. And I had told my wife at the time, who was a Southern belle and grew up all over the South, you know, I'm in my early 30s. I got a late start in radio. We don't have the time to ping pong every 2 years across the country and try to move up to a major market. Grand Rapids was considered a medium-sized market.
Okay.
So she had family in Dallas. I'd always promised her to try to get her closer to her family. And I was without a job. And I said, you know, I think if I get my foot in the door and with a little bit of creativity and a lot of hard work, we can maybe make it work. And so we moved to Dallas. I did a list of the radio stations that were in Dallas, who they were owned by and what the ratings were.
Okay.
And so 96.3 KSCS was owned by ABC at the time. And the mid-90s, I mean, country radio was through the roof.
This was his heyday, right? Like he was the most successful during this period of time.
The Dorsey Gang was,
Yep.
referring to Terry Dorsey. And, country radio in general. You're talking Garth Brooks, George Strait, Reba McEntire,
Yeah.
Dwight Yoakam. I mean, all of them, all the big ones, the mid-90s. And so I made my list and it was like, okay, I'd never even heard of the Dorsey Gang before. I'd never heard of KSCS radio station before. But it was like, okay, I'm going to make that one #1, the priority on my list. And I went into the radio station. I got hired part-time. And then I found out it was like I was so naive of major market radio, because once I got hired on, it was like, oh man, all these full timers that are ahead of me, they've got 3, 4, 5-year contracts. I'm coming in. There's no way I'll ever get on full time. So I was working part time at the radio station, and I got a call from the boss. And the boss says, hey, come in. Terry wants to talk to you. Dorsey and Hawkeye, they want to talk to you. So I came in, and there was a girl that was working with the morning show. Her name was Vanna. She was Vanna in the van. And so she would go out to grocery stores, car dealerships, anything that was going on. And she'd be like, hey, I'm out here. Come on out and get the tickets for the concerts this weekend. And so they called me in and they go, hey, Vanna's going on vacation. Would you consider maybe filling in for her for a week? And I'm like, one of the top radio shows, morning shows in the country.
Right.
I get a chance to work with them. And it's like, yeah. And Dorsey, I'm telling you, I'm lying if I said it went any longer than 30 seconds. He literally came up, let's see, okay, Vanna's in the van, and you're her long-lost brother, and you're the black sheep of the family. That's why we never, ever talked about you, and your mom had a thing for V-names, so she's Vanna, you're Van, and you're on work release program from prison. So, and the boss at the time, he goes, my real nickname is Monty. And he goes, Monty, he goes, look, you're working with the morning show. Don't try to be funny. Just no shtickula. Just say where you're at and what you're giving away, and that's it. Just fill in for her for the week. Well, a little light bulb goes off in my head. Once again, I'm working with one of the top morning shows in the country.
Yeah, you got to get them to keep you.
I'm going to go for it. You know?
Why not?
And from the very first day, I went home that day, and I told my ex-wife, my wife at the time, I go, man, that was radio. They made me sound so much better than I was, and we just clicked. We clicked from day one. And so over a 6-month period, I would fill in when Vanna would be on vacation, when she was getting married, when she was having babies, all this stuff over the next couple of years. It took me 3 years to get on full time.
Wow.
But they go, okay, Vanna's going to be the sales tool for the morning show. So the salespeople can sell her, but you're going to go wherever we want you to go. So whatever's coming to town, if it's a circus, if it's the ice show, whatever it is, we're going to send you, and we're going to just have fun with it. And that's literally what I did. I became the buffoon of the morning show. When I filled in for Vanna, I would go, just like you see on the news all the time, this is Chuck Stanley in front of the courthouse for NBC News. So I would go, and this is Vanna's brother Van filling in for her today, at the circus. And so people just started calling me Brother Van. So that's how I got the nickname Brother Van. It has nothing to do with the church. Everybody, although sometimes I use that to my advantage.
Well, yes.
But so I started working with the Dorsey Gang, and I've been tasered, I've been pepper sprayed, I've been attacked by police dogs, I've been buried alive for 3 days to raise toys for kids at Christmas time, and it just blew up. I got to meet people and go places that I never ever imagined.
So you guys were number one in Dallas.
Yeah.
And how much, because this was the time when Howard Stern, shock jock radio, how much did that affect what you were doing? Did you guys talk about that? Did it play in? No. I mean, you guys were totally different. He was talk radio, this was country, but still, he was such a force.
Well, he was syndicated. And so he would go through different runs here in Dallas. He would be on 97.1 The Eagle for a while, and then the contract would run out. They wouldn't renew him. And so, he'd be on some here or there. The nice thing about the Dorsey Gang was it was family friendly. And I learned a lot because the radio show that I had before, when it was my own, it was blue. I would say the Howard Stern affected me when I was in Grand Rapids. That's the kind of radio I was doing there. Some shock stuff. Nothing to his degree, of course. But when I came to work at KSCS, it was like, daggone, you can be funny without being vulgar and without being blue. And did we occasionally have a little innuendo here and there? Sure, but not very often.
A smart innuendo will land even better than just saying it.
10 times more. And it was so much fun because moms loved my character because it was like it's the uncle of my kids that kind of teases them and jokes with them, but he leaves after the end of the holiday. And so people would come up and they'd say, Brother Van, I pulled up at the school or at the driveway at the house, and I couldn't get out of the car because I wanted to hear what happened next. And that was true with all of the magic of Terry Dorsey was, God bless his soul. There's some people who don't even realize he retired, and it was less than 6 months after he retired that he passed away. And the great thing about Terry Dorsey was he did not care who on the morning show got the laugh. It didn't matter, Susanna, if it was you as a caller calling in, or if it was me on the street, or it was Hawkeye or Vanna, anybody, all the characters that called in. It's whatever made the show better.
Is that unique?
Yeah, I think so. It's very rare anyway. There's some other morning shows here in town. And I guess it's okay if I reference them. Kid Craddock with his morning show. He's passed away as well, but he left a legacy with his morning show as well. All those characters that are on the morning show, it's just, you know them. You know what they did on the weekend, you know, and it was the same thing with me. It was like, there's some personalities that keep it very close to the vest. You don't know their personal life.
Right.
And so, but there were other morning shows and characters that you know everything about them. And so Kid Craddock was very good. That's why his morning show has always been strong over all the years, even though he passed away. The people that are still on that show.
Were they one of your bigger competitors during that time?
Yep.
What was it like working for Terry? Like when you walked into a #1 radio show. Was there a ton of pressure? Was that
No. You went in. That was back in the days. I mean, the computers, you know, and Googling and show prep with computers was just starting. We'd go in. The show would start at 6. We'd get there about 5 o'clock because sometimes I would fill in the studio. So from 5 to 5:45, we'd be leafing through the newspaper and just talking, and we had a flow sheet on what we would do at certain times. But nothing was very seldom ever scripted out. It was like, hey, we're going to talk this, or this person's going to call in at that time. And the thing about Terry, like I said, made reference to, he didn't have a big ego. Now, he was kind of shy. Sometimes when he would be on the street, people would approach him or at an appearance, and they would occasionally walk away. He's a little standoff, but he was actually this is our comfort zone right here, sitting there behind the mic. And so Terry was very open and just no ego whatsoever. So working with him and for him, oh my gosh, you didn't mind getting up at 3:30 in the morning because it was so much fun.
Oh, what a treasure!
So much fun.
So when did that all come to an end?
So when I first started working at KSCS, we were owned by Cap Cities ABC.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were bought by Disney. And that, I never realized how great that company was to work for until the subsequent companies came along. But it was playing Radio Survivor. You have what's called a program director. He's over the DJs.
Mm-hmm.
He's over the overall sound of the station, the music and the DJs. And so over the 18 years that I was there full time, I probably worked for 6 different program directors, something like that.
Wow.
4 different companies, ABC. It was Cap Cities ABC, then it was Disney, then it was a company called Citadel, and then the last one was Cumulus. So we called it behind the scenes Radio Survivor. The TV show Survivor became so popular. It was like, okay, we're playing Radio Survivor. It's like, I got to duck this new company coming in or this new program director coming in. And I was able to do it successfully for 18 years and work with the morning show. And then the last company that came in, they, like many stations, I made reference to it earlier back in the mid-90s. That's when the FCC deregulated everything. So all the mom and pop radio stations were getting bought up. And it was these big companies that was coming in. And so instead of owning 20 stations across the country, it was 300-400. Yeah. And so the last company that bought the station, after about a couple months, it was so funny because I was in the production studio. And the phone rang, and I picked up the phone, and it was one of the people from the business office. And they go, "Hey, Brother Van, can you come down to Mr. XYZ's office?" And I go, "Yeah." I go, "Amy, is it time?"
Oh, did you know that you were doing the walk?
Yeah,
your last walk.
Because there was people all day. It was one of those days in radio when it was a bloodbath. And so I go, "Amy, is it time?" She goes,
Oh.
So I walked down, and it was so ironic. My legal name is David Montgomery. Okay. When I was a teenager, I got the nickname Monty. So the only person that ever, and then when I got into radio and working with Dorsey, it was Brother Van. Everybody calls me Brother Van. My wife was the only one that called me Monty. The only person that called me Dave was my parents. When I walked in the office to get the axe, well, David, your services aren't really needed here anymore. And it was like, you don't even know who I am, do you? You know, to you, I'm a promotion assistant or something else. Didn't have a clue. And and this is the ironic thing, Susanna, was a month after I got let go, the program director calls me back up and he goes, Brother Van, would you be interested in maybe working part time for the radio station? And I go, part time. And he goes, yeah, your name still has a lot of value in the Dallas Fort Worth area and the market. They knew the salespeople could still sell me, and so it was like, yeah, I love radio. You bet, I'll come back and work part time. And I figured it would still keep my, you know, keep my chops.
Yeah.
Because I still wanted to stay in radio, but that's when we kind of.
So that month that you were out of radio.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the first time that you hadn't had a job in, what, 18 years?
Yeah.
How terrible was that?
Oh, man. It was devastating.
Even if you had seen it come, it doesn't even matter. Like, if you get fired, even if you, like, you know it's coming or you hate the job, it's still like, but you loved the job.
I love the job. I love the people I work with. From the salespeople to the promotions people to the on-air staff, we were like a family.
And then you lose the whole family.
And that day, there was just firing after firing after firing. And anybody that's worked in radio, they know what I'm talking about because they probably experienced it one time or another. People were literally sitting in the hallways up against the wall crying because friends that they had worked with. I mean, earlier I made the reference that some people keep things close to the vest. Well, some people let it all out there. My son was born and I was on the radio in the delivery room calling into the morning show, you know.
Wow, yeah.
My parents, when they passed away, I called into the morning show that day. So it wasn't just a job, it was family. All of them were family. And so when we all were being let go, it was just, I remember having to go home and tell my wife at the time and my kids, okay, things are going to change.
Did you know what you were going to do? Like if they hadn't called you, what is this when the rodeo comes in?
Pretty much. I wanted to stay in radio, but, and this is where my life in general took a turn because my son was a junior in high school. Okay. He was number one in his class, going for valedictorian. He played. He's a Renaissance guy, smart, and he also was in sports.
He's also really tall, right?
Yeah, he's like 6'6",
yeah,
and
okay,
like Superman. Anyway, so he had Division I colleges looking for him for football. Oklahoma State, TCU, all these schools, and he was up for class valedictorian. My daughter was also very active in drama and theater and all that and everything. And so I wanted to stay in radio, but I was not going to pick up my family with the opportunities that the kids had in front of them, move to BFE, Illinois or somewhere, because I know the state of radio. I've been in it for over 20 years at that time. And it was like, I'm not going to move them. And a year from now, we're in the same boat. And I shook up my kids' high school years. I was not going to do it. And so in the long run, looking back, it was great for them. Not so much for Dad.
Well, that's part of being a parent, though,
I
right?
guess.
Do they ever? I don't know that you understand it until you are a parent, all the sacrifices that your parents made for you.
Oh, yeah.
You don't get it.
You do not get a mother's love or a father's love until you have that child and you hold them for the first time in that hospital.
Yeah.
And so along with that comes sacrifices. And so I decided, of course, I tried to get in at other radio stations here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but it's not like a teacher's position or a nurse's position where these jobs just come up all the time. You know, radio, it's few and far between, especially for what you might want to do.
Right.
And so it was like, well, okay, I'll change careers before I'll upset the family.
Okay.
And so that's when I started working at the rodeo.
And how did you just apply for a wanted ad, or did you
Um,
go to the rodeo, or
over the years, I did have
because
to
you were in
do.
country, right? So
Yeah,
country music,
and
radio.
actually, before I got into radio, I had worked at a dude ranch, working with horses before I started into radio. So it was like, um, a lot of the salespeople that I had worked with at the radio station, like I said, we were all family, and they were like, "Hey, Brother Van, we'll keep an ear out. We'll try to find." And so one of the salespeople called me up and said, "Hey, they're looking for a salesperson." I go, "I never done sales." They said they're looking for a salesperson at the rodeo. Well, for those people that aren't familiar with this market, it's called the Mesquite Championship Rodeo. It's in a suburb of it's 15 minutes east of downtown Dallas. And it's a legendary rodeo. It's a professional PRCA rodeo. And so I actually had to go through several different interviews. And I told the general manager who I was interviewing with, I said, "I'm not a salesperson. I'm a personality. If you need help with that." And he goes, "Yeah, but sales is all about relationships."
Just about talking to people.
And I think you do good. He goes, I want to put you in group sales where you put the events together for churches or company outings, and also in suite sales. And so that's what I did. I started doing that.
And what year was this?
That was 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
2012. So I've been there 10 years.
How many people do you think know that rodeo is the official sport of Texas?
If you're Texan, you do. If you're not from Texas, you might not. So
But it's interesting that I can totally see the sports side, but it's also a show. Like, it seems like and I'd be interested to hear, like, who you guys are competing with to get people in the seats. Like, are your fans also Cowboys fans? Are they NASCAR fans? Are they just everybody across the board?
I would say they're everybody across the board. I hate to say this, but rodeo, I mean, we're not talking the 50s and the 60s anymore with Roy Rogers and Hopalong Cassidy and all these characters. Even I this might be a weird reference, but like the Mayberry, Andy Griffith.
Okay.
That was a different time, and things are changing. Kids, they want to play on their
Video
game
games.
stations
Yeah.
and this and that. And so, is rodeo dying? I don't know. It might be going through a little phase where attendance is down a little bit. Um, it will always exist. It's there's some people that don't even realize it's a sport. They do. They think it's kind
a
of
show.
a show.
Well, but I think of it from, because I talk to a lot of people in the theater industry
Mhm.
still, and there's still, how do we get people in seats? And so I imagine there's the same challenge in the rodeo. How do you compete against so many other options for people to go do? They can go to a place and play video games. They can play video games at home. They can watch movies at home. They can go to sporting events. They can go to all these other things. And you're not the traveling rodeo. You guys are different from like your regular traveling rodeo. You guys you get big names.
Well, to explain the rodeo for those that aren't familiar with it,
do.
there's amateur rodeo, there's professional rodeo. So we are a PRCA rodeo, Professional Rodeo Cowboy Association. So these cowboys, they've got to have their PRCA card. They've got to be professional. They've got to be working for points and money to get to the finals in Las Vegas, which is our Super Bowl or World Series. And but there are other rodeos that are like in all the little towns that's outside of Dallas, Fort Worth. Some of them are professional. A lot of them are amateur. Nothing against that, because everybody's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But they're not many of them aren't the level of the Mesquite Championship Rodeo. So these are some of the top cowboys. number one, they love coming to our place because it's indoors and air conditioned.
Yeah.
And it's June, July, and August, the hot months. So they love coming to our place as opposed to being out in some little podunk town doing a rodeo in August when it's 105 degrees. But many people don't know it's a professional rodeo. Every time you go, it's just like a football game. Yeah, there's four quarters. There's, the timeouts, there's this and that, there's the rules. And it's the same thing with rodeo. There's the different events, the saddle bronc, bareback, team roping. I'm going to forget them all. Bull riding. And so you got the different events, and they're all in a particular order, and you've got your intermission. But you never know what's going to. Some nights it might be a half hour shorter because the Cowboys didn't ride as long. Some nights it might be a half hour longer because they stuck it for 8 seconds on the bull and everything. So, but rodeo, what's neat, Susanna, is because I'll get a company that does a company outing.
Okay.
And they'll bring their employees out and they'll pick it up, the charge of the ticket and dinner and everything. And we are competing with all those things you mentioned, especially here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We got the Cowboys, we got the Rangers, we got every professional team that you could have. We've got all the water parks, we've got Six Flags, every type of competition. We've got medieval times. We've got a lot of amateur arena football teams and arena soccer teams to compete with. So what's nice is when a company comes out, when they leave or I get a response back from them the next week, it was like, man, I haven't been to the rodeo in so long and I forgot how fun it was.
Yeah.
Because it's not the thing that people and families do every weekend anymore. I remember as a kid growing up, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and my dad and I, oh my gosh, we went to the amateur baseball a couple times a week, and maybe that's something to say for families too. I mean, how often do mom and dads do stuff with their kids even nowadays? Maybe that's part of it too,
I don't know.
Am I getting too philosophical there?
No, but I do because I also thought this was interesting. And if you can give me, and I'm sure that you do this all the time, so I'm going to let you do it versus me do it, which is a brief history of the rodeo.
Okay. So this past year in 2022, it was our 65th anniversary. It was started by a gentleman by the name of Neil Gay, and it literally was a parking lot in Mesquite, Texas. And he threw up some bleachers and there was a little field there and they did competition. To kind of give you the history of rodeo, because a lot of people don't even know the history of rodeo. It started out as competitions between different ranches. So it would be like...
originating in Texas, though.
Yeah. It would be like, well, I bet you our tough cowboy, he can stay on that horse longer than your tough cowboy. And so that's how like saddle bronc and bareback and bull riding and all that. And then with the roping events, many of those were a necessity on a ranch, a cattle ranch. They would have to rope the steer or whatever to catch him and vaccinate him, or it might be sick or whatever. So that's how rodeo kind of started, was competition between different ranches. Well, the Mesquite Championship Rodeo was started by Neil Gay. And it started, like I said, parking lot with some horses out in the middle of this field. And then it grew, and then he put in some more fancy bleachers, and then eventually it expanded and built an arena with a covered roof and suites, but it still wasn't enclosed. The suites were air conditioned, but not the rest of the arena. There was open air. And then in the late 90s, I remember I moved here in 94, and I wanted a taste of Texas. I want to get in the radio station and get put on my cowboy hat and boots and everything. And it's like, so it was like, I want a taste of Texas. So the first three things I did was I went to a Rangers game, I went to JFK Museum, and I went to the Mesquite Rodeo.
Nice.
Little did I know that 20 some odd years later, I'd be working there. But so the rodeo just grew, and I'd be lying. I can't remember which governor declared it, but it declared Mesquite the rodeo capital of Texas.
Well, Bush declared that rodeo was the official sport of Texas.
It might have been about that same time. I don't.
You'd think.
I'd be lying.
It has to be Bush, though, wouldn't it?
I would imagine.
Right.
But the
Bush, who owned a baseball team, declared the rodeo the official sport of Texas.
Imagine that. So, but back in the day, way, I mean, we've got pictures around the arena where it was a big thing for when concerts were in town or dignitaries. We've got pictures of Mick Jagger and Reagan and both Bushes and Tanya Tucker. I mean, I'm trying to think of all the names, all the movie stars, the TV show Dallas.
Right.
You know, that was real popular back in the 80s. And so all these people that would come to town, they would go to the Mesquite Rodeo. And we've got just pictures of every, like I said, dignitary and celebrity and musician that ever came through that would come to the Mesquite Rodeo. And just I forget the question you asked me now.
That's all right. You answered it. I don't remember it either, though. It was the history of the rodeo. It was the history
of the rodeo.
Yeah,
so
yeah. You did.
So let me wrap that up kind of by saying, at the time that we're doing this interview, ironically enough, Neil Gay, who was the patriarch of the Mesquite Championship Rodeo, just passed away. He was in his early 90s. It did go on. There's been 2 or 3 ownerships since then. But it was kind of a sad day around the rodeo because knowing that the patriarch, the guy that started Mesquite Championship Rodeo, but he lived a long, good life. A lot of people had great things to say about him.
Because the rodeo has this history, I think it goes back to like 1883 in Pecos, Texas, was like the first rodeo. There's some debate about Santa Fe, but we're not going to talk about Santa Fe because they're not in our state.
And you're going to know more than me because remember, I'm a radio guy that fell into rodeos. So really, is that true, Susan?
Yes, I'm going with it. But do you feel like, because there is this history, there's history and tradition, do you guys get calls from people who are like, well, we need to change. We need to do things differently. Or if it's like the rodeo is like, no, this is what we've always done. This is how it is.
I would say no. We do not get calls to change.
Everybody wants it. We like the rodeo the way it is. We want it to stay the same. I mean, I have to think some things as far as the training of the cowboys, the training of the horses, and all that has probably improved now that they have data and science and all this stuff. But
yeah, just like with any sport. I mean, way back in the day, the cowboys never wore any type of protective gear. They just got on the horse with their cowboy hat. Nowadays, you'll see a lot of them wear the protective vests or it's like a hockey helmet that they wear instead of the cowboy hat. But rodeo it's been true. It's stayed, Now, do they change the music a little bit? Yeah. It's maybe not so much the country music that they're playing. They're playing pump up music, just like you hear at college football games and things like that. But it's stayed true to itself.
Do you see more women participating in the rodeo now than it used to be? Like women could only do barrel racing for a long time.
And it's still pretty much that. The rodeo has brought in another event for the women. It's called breakaway roping.
Okay.
The regular roping event that the men do, they rope the steer, they get off their horse, they go, flip the steer over, tie him up. That's their time. So the women do is called breakaway roping. So they go and they lasso the steer, and then they let go of the rope. And as soon as the rope breaks away from them, then that's when their time ends.
Interesting.
So, but yeah, barrel racing and breakaway roping, that's kind of been the only women's events. Now,
do you have women beating on the door saying, hey, we want to do these things? So they're like, no, you guys are crazy for wanting to do it.
Not so much at our rodeo.
No.
Now, I do know of some women bull riders and bronc riders and stuff, but they're few and far between. At least in the professional ranks.
I remember going when I was in high school to one of the amateur rodeos outside of Tyler where I grew up. And our friend was like, I'm going to be a bull rider. And we were like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't last very long. He didn't last very long. But it was always fun. It was something to go do on a Friday or Saturday night. And we hung out behind the bleachers. It was always a good time, you know?
Drinking a Coors Light back there on the tailgate.
Do you think Yellowstone has helped the popularity of cowboying in general? Like they make it look really kind of cool, if not just a little bit dramatic.
I was thinking this summer that we would have a big surge because of Yellowstone and what's the other one? 1883.
Oh, 1880. It is 1883, isn't
with
it?
Tim McGraw and Faith Hill.
So good. It was so good.
I watched Yellowstone. I didn't want to get wrapped up in the 1883. It's like I can't take on another series. But I did. I was thinking that it would cause a surge, just like Garth Brooks back and George Strait back in the 80s and the 90s. It was a big surge for country radio and a big surge for the Western way of life in general.
Interesting.
Pickup trucks, cowboy hats, boots, Wranglers, you know, that whole lifestyle and fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought this past year, because Yellowstone was off the chart popular.
So popular.
I thought we would get a surge from it, but not really. Although, you want to know something? I keep saying that, but our ticket sales were up this year 25%, higher than it's ever been.
Well,
so
post-COVID, it could be post-COVID, but I don't know. That's probably a good indicator. I mean, obviously, not everybody's watched Yellowstone, but it's so popular. And they do make it like they talk about you're not a real cowboy and what a cowboy is. And they make cowboying look cool.
Yeah. Yeah. What's funny, though, is, and I'm not going to say which actors, but if you know how to ride horses, and it's like in any Western movie or TV shows, it's like, man, that guy, he doesn't
know how to ride a horse.
Know how to ride a horse.
Well, there's supposed to be somebody on set teaching them how to ride a horse.
Most of them look pretty good.
So,
but it's funny that you mentioned this, and we're kind of getting off track, but it's still about riding horses.
Yeah.
I was watching The Bachelorette last night on TV, you know, and the romantic thing was to go on a horseback ride, you know, and it was like, the guy was holding the reins and they were like way up here. You're supposed to hold the reins right down here by the saddle horn. And he's holding the reins up here and his elbows are flapping like this. And he's got shorts. You don't ride a horse in shorts, you know, and flip flops and his toes are hanging down and everything. It was like, okay. And he's kind of trying to give her instruction, like, yeah, it's been a couple years since I rode a horse, but I know how to ride. I was like, you ain't got a clue. But on Yellowstone's pretty good. It's pretty good as far as whoever their trainer is.
Well, do you see Taylor Sheridan come to the rodeo ever? I mean, I think he seems to be very passionate about that whole way of life.
Hasn't been out to the Mesquite Rodeo
Unless
yet.
you just don't know.
Well, that's
Taylor Sheridan, call Brother Van for tickets. He wants you to come to the rodeo. Bring your whole crew.
Yeah. We'll put you in the 30-person suite up there. Put the whole crew up there.
Yeah, you have to watch 1883, though, because it's only one season, and it's okay. You're not going to have like 5
But aren't they
going to
have? They're not going to have another one? Is that it?
Supposedly, 1883 is this one set period of time, and then the next one is going to be, I think, like a 20 or 30-year jump.
Okay.
But I think he, as a writer, because we watched that one first, and then we went back and watched Yellowstone.
Okay.
And I think his writing and his character growth and his story and his style, he took everything that he had learned in all those other seasons. In 1883 is a different style of series than Yellowstone. Like Yellowstone is like, it's like a soap opera on a ranch in a way, you know, like there's one-liners and zingers and crazy things that would like never happen in real life, right?
Right. And it's almost I would compare it to Dallas.
Yes.
The TV show Dallas.
A nighttime soap opera, right?
It's a bunch of rich people, you know, trying to finagle the other rich people. And the one thing though, Susanna, is the amount of people that's getting killed off on that show. Come on.
I know, right?
It's so unrealistic, but you get hooked and you get watching.
Well, in 1883 is more about the characters, the period of time when they're moving from Texas across Texas during, 1883. So you see they crossed the Red River, and it was the Red River. Like they stopped in different towns along the way. They're like, oh, we're going to have to cross at Mineral Springs. So there's this whole reference of Texas history as it's going, and it's just, we're huge fans.
Maybe I'll give it another try.
You should give it a try.
I did about 2 episodes of it, and there was somebody had scurvy or something, and I was just like, that one.
I'm out. Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about that we didn't hit on? You have any juicy gossip, juicy corporate radio gossip, or juicy? It sounds like you had a really actually lovely time with Dorsey and the gang. I didn't know. Sometimes you think about. There's a slew of documentaries right now and I'm thinking of like The Last Dance right now with Michael Jordan. Have you seen that one?
I have not watched it, but I've heard
amazing
really
things,
great things.
But it talks about the drive to be successful and what it took, and how he kind of he wasn't really nice to people during that time period. But it does not sound like that was your experience.
It wasn't, and I had mentioned earlier that there was a period there where we were owned by Disney. And we got season passes, just like you would Six Flags, and for a family of 4, which I ironically happen to have it at that time, and we got like 50% off on the hotels, the resorts, and discounts on food and souvenirs and everything. My kids thought it was normal to go to Disney World 2-3 times a year.
Oh,
They really did. When they launched the cruise ships, I got to broadcast from the cruise ships. Every time they opened up a new ride at Disneyland or Disney World, I was the guy on the street. So I would go out and I would cover all the new rides and everything. But just those experiences, and I mean, meeting politicians and musicians and sports figures. My kid when he was 5 years old, got to meet Barney backstage.
Oh, yeah.
Not every kid gets to do that. He got to go to see Hannah Montana.
Yeah.
And just all those different experiences. Radio was a great career. It was a great career. And the people that I worked with were fantastic. And I was so honored when I got the phone call to ask if I would be a pallbearer at Terry Dorsey's funeral. And it was like, yeah, man, that's really cool. So radio's not like it used to be because of what we talked about before, the big companies coming in and buying, and instead of owning 20 stations across the country, they own 300 or 400. And instead of an overnight DJ that's learning his chops and everything and experimenting, it's all recorded and automated on the weekend. So many times you're listening to a radio show on the weekend and it's all automated and recorded. And
do you get to make any decisions about what you play, or is it pretty much handed to you?
It's always for a long time it's been that way.
Yeah.
You go in, there's 24 sheets of paper. Each one represents an hour of the day. This is the music. This is the commercials. This goes here. This goes here. You talk here. You talk there. But back in the day, you did have some flexibility. Now everything's just loaded in the computer and it just goes right through. You got 12 seconds to talk over this song.
Nice.
You got 5 seconds here to talk. Where back in the day, you're putting on callers and you're doing bits and you're doing shtick, and it's just changed. And what you were talking about earlier with like Howard Stern and stuff, you've got your big name DJs that will be syndicated in all these other different markets, and so it's edged out a lot of the the guys getting starts, or what they do lots of times in these smaller markets around the United States. They'll have a Dallas DJ do the show. They'll go in, they'll tape a show within 20-25 minutes, and it'll play on this local station in whatever, Hillsboro or Gainesville or something. But so radio's lost that local appeal, except for a few rarities anymore that are still kind of out there.
So where can people find you if they want to find you?
If they want to find me,
Mm-hmm.
well, if you want to buy tickets to the Mesquite Championship
There you
Rodeo,
go.
call 972-285-877, extension 2041. Or you can hear me still on KSCS. I've been there 28 years now. So, and I do weekends here and there. And so just tune in, go to 963.com and see where I'm at.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you. It's been fun.
If you made it all the way to the end and you are still here, please drop me a line at gibagencydallas.com. Tell me why you stayed, and I'm going to enter you into a drawing, and I'm going to give away $100. There you go. Have a great day.